Okay, so good morning. Today we shall discuss numerical integration, numerical differentiation. In next 2 days, we'll continue the discussing about these things. Also, the error involved in these, why we do numerical integration and differentiation, these things. And this is going to prepare you for the next week, because next week we are going to have another resource person, uh, Dr. Nishita Desai, who works with TIFR, and she's in theoretical physics division, theoretical particle physics division. But she will be talking about various computational techniques that one uses. Okay, and up to undergraduate level, whatever different areas we cover, how programs can be written, how numerical calculations can be done, and how simulations can be done. Okay, that will be done. So this week was in a way preparation week for you. Okay, getting basics of Python, getting basics of Excel, and how you can do few things. Okay, now what I shall do before I proceed for the next thing is I will discuss some quick methods. I had talked, I had said probably in the afternoon session I will take some time. Okay, but right now let me mention some of the common mistakes which are done in earlier assignments. So let me share one say Excel sheet, and let me start with few things. Okay, I'll discuss the solutions to the assignment in the afternoon session. But first, let me present this Excel window. Okay. Is this visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So here, when you are writing, see, there are one of the common mistakes which I have explained also on the groups is writing numbers. For example, see, we were discussing two problems: the problem of Maxwell velocity distribution, okay, and the Planck's constant, Planck's curve, basically. Now, if I'm writing a number, okay, say if I'm writing a number Boltzmann constant k, okay, so suppose I write k over here and I write the number 1.38 into 10 raised to minus 23 in SI unit. Okay, one way of course is writing 1.38, then you multiply that with 10 raised to minus 23. Okay, and you can write this equal to this, so that that particular cell will be assigned with that value. Problem, if you write it here this way, it is no problem. Okay, if you write it this way in the formula, look at the formula bar and look at the value which is put in the cell. There is a difference, and you can clearly see the difference between the two. Okay, so writing this method, you can see in the formula bar, creates a problem. The problem is that it takes this as two different values. 1.38 is one number, 10 raised to minus 23 is another number. Okay, and then whenever you want to square, you will have to put extra bracket around that and take a square of that. Okay, the better way of writing is writing in scientific notation. So straight away write 1.38. E stands for exponent, which is power of 10 minus 23. Okay, this is not e raised to minus 23. This is 10 raised to minus 23. E only indicates that it is the next part is the exponent part. It is power of 10 part. Okay, and whenever you want to refer, of course, you want to refer to this cell and take square, that is fine, that is perfectly okay. Okay, say for example, you may write constant c in another cell, okay, and you may write c 3e8, okay, because it is 3.00 10 raised to 8. So you can write things like this. You can write h also as 6.626 10 raised to minus 34. Okay, all these are in SI unit we are talking about. Okay, of course, which units to use depending on given problem, if you're doing everything in one particular system of unit, you have to follow that. Okay. If you're using another system of units, then you have to follow that consistently, that particular system. You can't, if you mix the units, then you have to keep a track of what number you had put where. Okay. And many times what may happen is you will get a wrong number. For example, when you're writing something as e raised to say minus mu square by kt. Now remember that when you write e raised to something, okay, that whatever that e raised to x is, that x has to be a dimensionless number. Okay, so if it is going to be dimensionless number, if you're following SI system of unit, then you are putting everything, all those values together, m value, u value correctly, k value correctly, t value correctly, then you will get certain number. But if I mix the units, naturally that x is going to be different, and then the range at which you are going to see objects, the peak and everything will shift accordingly. So you will get correct answer under such conditions only if you are using all correct units. Okay. At places we had given you, take mass of, consider the carbon dioxide molecule, or consider nitrogen molecule, or consider hydrogen molecule. Now, of course, you can write the mass in AMU, but then when you're putting in this formula, you need to convert that into SI unit. Okay, so you have to take the value for AMU correctly. There is a simple way of remembering. If you don't remember AMU, then it is there is a simple way. It is a reciprocal of Avogadro's number. Okay, so Avogadro's number generally people remember. I don't know why people remember only that number and don't remember many other numbers. But well, people do remember 6.02 10 raised to 23 per mole, or 6.02 10 raised to 26 per kilomole. Now again, SI unit means we have to bother about 6.02 10 raised to 26 kilomole per kilomole, and a reciprocal of that approximately 1.67 into 10 raised to minus 27 kilogram. That will be typically 1 AMU, or mass of say hydrogen atom. Okay, and taking that, you can convert other things easily. Okay, so as long as you are interested in say approximate behavior of the graph, okay, such kind of approximations are fine. If you are later in numerical simulation, you want to become more and more precise, then you need to decide up to what decimal place I want to be precise. Okay, so one has to do these things accordingly. Fine. So certain common mistakes were that either using mixed units, or in a long formula writing a number without scientific notation. So moment you do this, I want to write mass multiplied by say velocity square, and a velocity I'm writing as long as velocity or speed I'm writing as 100, 200, that is fine. Okay, but if I'm taking a different number, or if I'm talking about dividing by kt, yeah, common problem again. I want to divide by kt. Okay, so when I want to divide by kt, and let us suppose P I'm writing here, say 300 Kelvin. Now I know that K is written in D2 and P is written in G2, and I want KT, okay, or sorry, I want say 1 by KT. Then what I will do is 1 divided by, okay, I have to write D2 divided by G2. Now keep in mind that I have not put brackets over here. So what happens is, when I calculate 1 divided by D2, I get 1 by K. To that value, I have to further divide, because T is also in denominator. So I have to do 1 by D2, 1 by divided by G2. If I want to consider this as KT, what I should be doing is I have to put a bracket, then multiply, and do this. Though initially people say that writing more brackets makes life easier, moment you start using Excel and everything and where you see everything, entire formula in the same font, in the same line, okay, minimizing number of brackets does help. So whatever technique you know to minimize the number of brackets, that is going to be really useful. Otherwise, sometimes you may lose count of bracket, okay, and you press enter, and then Excel understands that you have missed some bracket, but it may not know. It will only count how many brackets you have put, and it will try to complete those brackets at the end. But at times it may do it at a place where you don't want to do it. Okay, and you may not realize where the mistake has gone, and therefore writing counting bracket becomes very useful and important. So writing something like 1 upon a, so say 1 by AB is, or say A by BC, better way of writing is A divided by B divided by C. Okay, because anything that is in denominator, you go on dividing. That's a good technique. So say for example, in this case, if I put 1 by KT, so I say 1 by D2 divided by G2, okay, and I'll get correct value. So this is 1 by KT value. Okay, these are the kind of common mistakes many of you had done in the earlier assignment. I'm specifically telling you right now, though I'm going to discuss those assignments in the afternoon, is because whatever we'll be doing now, okay, part of it is going to be this part might be useful when you're going to do some extra practice, or you may think of some additional exercise on your own before I give the third assignment. Okay, so let me come back to the discussion of numerical integration. So coming back to the slides, coming back. Let me stop this and start presenting the presentation. And all the difficulties in your earlier first and second assignment we'll discuss when we are going to discuss those things in the afternoon. Okay. So is this visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. So first we're going to discuss numerical integration. And what are we doing in numerical integration? Let us understand integration of a function is area under the curve. So you have got some function which you have plotted, say f of x versus x, and area under the curve you want to calculate. In numerical integration, what you do is the function is evaluated in the given range, so you actually calculate the value of f of say f of x at say x equal to 0 or some x0 value, say a, then x1 value, x2 value. So from a to b you are going to divide it into certain number of divisions, okay, and at each of those intervals you are actually going to calculate the value of f of x, okay, numerical value of f of x. And now this is possible because the Excel or Python kind of program computers are available, so you can quickly do this. Okay, then what we do is you calculate area under this curve by taking all these boxes together. Fine. Now when we do this, let's first understand why numerical integration is useful. Because we know that we have to find out area under the curve, and the function is plotted as a curve. There is no, first of all, there is no guarantee that this area will be finite. Okay, if you take limits, okay, and the limits could be anything. If you take a small range, well, you know the area will be finite in general. Not necessarily, because say for example, even if I take tan x function and I take a range that includes say pi by 2, then I'm not sure, because at pi by 2 it is asymptotically approaching infinity. Okay, so there is no guarantee all the time that whenever you are doing integration, that area will remain finite under the curve. Okay, so that is one problem in solving integration. First of all, whenever we solve integration on paper using what we call analytical methods, okay, we have problems. Everybody knows that integrations are relatively more difficult. Let's see why they are difficult, and let's see how we can approach that, how we can solve that difficulty. Okay, so I mean, somebody says that integration is very easy, is a simple topic. probably that person is not really doing good integrations, or not really doing the appropriately required sufficiently complicated integrals. Okay, I mean, some simple functions probably that person is doing, and then he's saying that integrations are easy. But in general, integrations are going to be difficult. And why they are going to be difficult? Because you're going to calculate area under the curve. The area need not be finite. That could be problem number one. Problem number two is, though area is finite, there is no guarantee that that area under the curve itself can be written as another function. Okay. Say for example, when you know integration cos x dx, you say it is sin x. Okay. So area under the curve you can write as another compact function sin x. But it is not true always. Not all functions, when you find out area under the curve, can be written as another compact function. It is called, you can't write every integral in a closed form. Okay, it's going to be area under the curve, so it can be, you may treat it as a large number, I mean some summation of a huge big series. That series can be convergent, but not necessarily we can write it in the closed form. That is another thing, and that's why whichever functions you can integrate and write it in closed form, we tend to remember that. Okay, therefore the integration tables are always useful. You know, those are reference tables. And more kind of integration you do, generally you try to bring the unknown form into the known form, so that you know you have remembered those integrals. It's a pattern recognition. You don't want to do it, well, not much of an option. In an analytical way, you will have to do it. You will have to remember few things. In numerical techniques, what we do is we do not bother about whether it can be written in a closed form or not. We need that number, we need that answer. We are not really much bothered about whether I can write this in a closed compact form or not. Calculation of area under the curve is our main goal. Coming to that, understanding that, now let us see what we have to do. Now here in this particular diagram itself, you can clearly see that this is going to be an approximation. Why? Because there are boxes there are triangles you can see, okay, which are not counted. But then it may also happen, for example, over here, very first bar, okay, that some area you have excluded. Or some area I have counted extra. Okay. Now for nicely behaving kind of functions, okay, and when I say nicely behaving, also if the function is not monotonic, okay, it is not either only increasing or decreasing, especially if the function is oscillated in nature. Many times what may happen is, for the positive errors and negative errors, that means the area that you are not considered and area that you overshooted, they may compensate, and the final answer that you will get in numerical method may still match with the ideal answer, okay, the actual area. Now, there is nothing like actual area when you are doing numerical integration. What one can realize is, if I make this smaller and smaller bars, then I may take the height of the bar to greater distance, and the areas that which are left blank, those areas will minimize. So dividing the given range into larger and larger number of strips is going to be useful thing. Problem always is, if I break it into larger number of steps, I will have to do more calculation. More calculation, when if it was to be done with hand, would have been difficult. With computer, becomes relatively easy. But even then, when you are going to involve large number of calculations, and if you really want something called real-time answers or answers in very short duration, there is always going to be a limit that in how much part you are going to break it. Okay, so while learning this, one also has to learn many times with practice, many times with experience, that how much small part is sufficient? How small is small is an important thing in physics always. Okay, so when I say I divide it into small parts, how small is small? Okay, that is an important question. So let's see some techniques, and then we will discuss the other related things. So there is something called trapezoidal rule, okay, for integration. This is one of the way. Now what is done? There are points which I have calculated for a given function. I don't know the intermediate value. So what I'm doing is I'm just joining all these points, all adjacent points, with a straight line. Then I'm going to take each of this area, and you can see any particular bar here, any particular column over here that you observe in this. Say for example, this point over here and this point over here is a trapezoid, because these two vertical lines are parallel to each other, and it is a kind of a quadrilateral. So it is a trapezoid. Okay, and you know what is the area of trapezoid? What is the area of trapezoid? It is half into the distance between the two parallel lines, okay, multiplied by addition of the two parallel sides. Now, say for example, if this number is say y7 and this number is say y8, okay, then I will have to add the two, because these are two parallel sides. So y7 plus y8, okay, y7 is nothing but height at say x7, okay, and y8 is height at x8, okay. So x7, x8, these are the intervals I'm talking about. So y7 plus y8 I have to take, multiply that with this difference, which I'm going to call delta x, into half. That is going to be the trapezoid area of trapezoid. I will add all such areas, and then I will see that this is nothing but area under the curve. Now, when I do this, what I'm missing is I have approximated all these points with straight line joining them, but it is quite possible that actual curve may go slightly below these lines or slightly above these lines. So that small part of sector I may not consider, okay, between the curve joining 2 points and the straight line joining 2 points. Whatever small sector I'm going to miss, that area I'm not going to count, and therefore that is going to introduce small error. Again, if the function is of oscillatory nature, probably it will be taken care. But many times this works if I'm going to make sufficiently small intervals, and we'll see with some examples how this can be done. Now let us write formula. Is there a way to write formula for this? Okay, this is easily understood that you have to take the adjacent functions which are evaluated at adjacent intervals, okay, add them, multiply with the difference delta x into half. Okay, so basically you are taking average of these two adjacent bars, okay, because you are adding them and then dividing by 2. Okay, so you are taking some average like this. So instead of taking this particular column like this trapezoid, what you are effectively doing is you are effectively calculating it as a half rectangle, okay, half height, okay, and then you are probably partly considering extra area, partly considering avoiding that particular area, but I mean assuming it to be a straight line. But if it is curved from inside, then you are actually considering more area, and you are neglecting less area over here. So overall you are going to add more area. But if it is curved out, then you are overall you are going to take effectively less amount of area. So depending on what is the nature of the curve, the area, the error in the area is going to be either positive or negative. Now let's write the expression. So consider f of x in the range with inclusive a and b. Okay, the upper and lower limits. Lower limit on x is a, upper limit on x is b. Divide the interval in n parts so that each part is delta x. So you're going to divide now in equal n parts. So this b minus a divided by n will give you delta x. Then area under the first curve, x0 to x1, can be written like this: delta x by 2, y0 plus y1. This is what we consider area of trapezoid. You can go on doing this till the last interval from xn minus 1 to xn. And when you add all these, you will get this particular formula. Okay, the complete integral is going to be delta x by 2. Now look at this: y0 plus y1 was there in the first integral. In the second integral, it would have been y1 plus y2, then y3 plus y2 plus y3, and so on. So y1 will get added twice, y2 will get added twice, and so on, except first one and last one. So y0 is only once, yn is only once, and all rest intervals are taken twice. Okay, that gives you the complete integration. Okay, now we what we can do is we can work on this, and let's see whether our answers match. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is let me share the Excel sheet. And let me keep my video off. So if anybody has a speed issue, then it can be taken care. Okay, is this visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let's calculate area for some function, and we will take different kind of functions. Okay. So first thing is I need to write the upper limit, lower limit. So let me write x minimum, x maximum, and say I want to take 0 to maybe 5. Okay. And I want to calculate how much is delta x. So this is equal to this x maximum minus x minimum divided by how many intervals I want to take. Let's suppose I want to take 100 intervals. Okay, so I'm dividing this entire range in 100 parts. Okay, now let me write x here and f of x here. Whatever is the f of x, I will write that there. So the first value of x is going to be the x minimum value. So I'm directly clicking on B2 and entering that. And then I'm writing formula that A5 plus $A $2. Remember, $A $2 is to lock this particular cell A2, so that I can, even when I copy paste the formula to other cells down, okay, that A2 still remains same. Okay, so now let me copy this, and I started at A5, so I have to go to A105. I have selected all these cells now, but I have not copied the formula. So I have selected this end up to A105. I will paste it, and I can verify. You know, when I press Control down arrow, I can verify that yes, it has gone up to 5. Yes.
Sir, we use $5 only, right? What is the need? What is the need for $5? Only $1 is enough, right?
Yes, only $1 is enough. I do not want to use this interval anywhere else. Therefore, I even if I write $A $2, that is fine. Okay. Especially when I want to paste the similar kind of formula onto further columns. Okay. Then in that case, say for example, I want to take dx for this, and then dy for the next column, and dz for third column, and I'm writing all those values in say A2, B2, C2, and so on. Okay, so that time writing $A $2 becomes more useful, because then I can copy the same formula in column B, and there it will be copied as B $2, and in C it will be copied as C $2. In this case, I want to fix only that cell. I'm not interested in copying the same formula to next column as well. Okay, so therefore I'm writing $A $2, but $A $2 would have sufficed. Okay, whenever a particular cell in the entire Excel sheet, I want to use only as that single cell. I don't want to treat it as equivalent to other things. Say for example, when you are calculating Maxwell velocity distribution, okay, in 3 different columns you are writing 3 different temperatures. There the temperature becomes, suppose I have written temperature in say B3, I would have written $3 because the same formula I would have copied in C to make it $3. Okay, here because it is single, $1, $2 even tells me that this is one single cell I'm treating independently. I'm not treating it for copying it further. But what you said is correct, that only $2 would have sufficed. Okay, my way of looking at it, or my way of working of it is, if I do not want to use it again and again for copying into the next column, I will preferably call it $2 instead of just $2. Okay, but yeah.
Okay, sir.
Okay, now I want to write some function. Okay, so I can take any function. Let me take the first simplest function equal to say x square. So I say a phi square, and I'm going to copy this formula. So I have copied this formula. Moment I copy, you see what happens is dotted line appears. Now I'll select the cells B5 to B105 and paste it. Just a minute. I need to add someone. Yeah, sorry for that. I had to add a person and it was not giving me option. Okay, well, coming to this thing, if I plot the graph, I know the graph is going to be parabola because it is x square kind of a function. It is just for our understanding. I'm plotting this. And I could have, of course, taken these x and fx cells also to indicate what is the nature of the graph. But well, this is the graph. Fine. I'm going to write in this column now the addition of all these things. So using trapezoidal rule. What was my trapezoidal rule? If you remember, it was delta x divided by 2 into y0 and all in intermediate values multiplied by 2, and then final value was again yn. Okay, so what I will do is I will write all those values. So this is same as y0, and therefore y0 is nothing but f of x. So b5. Here I'm going to take 2 into this number, because remember it was 2y1 plus 2y2 plus 2y3 and so on. This I'll copy till B104, not 105. Okay, till n minus 1, and I'm going to paste that formula. So you see the last value is still not written. I will write that as yn. So what has happened? I have written y0 as it is, y1, y2, y3, everything I'm multiplying with 2, and the last value I'm writing just yn again. And I have to add all these things. Okay, so what is my what is going to be the integration? So integration is going to be delta x, so this is dx divided by 2 multiplied by this summation, this entire summation. So sum from this point to this point. And this is the answer. So what is this answer? This is integral x square dx from 0 to 5. Integral x square dx from 0 to 5. Yeah, let me go slowly. Let me first share that formula, okay, and then I will come back to this. So I'm stopping Excel presentation. I'm going to present this PowerPoint slide where I had written the formula. So I hope you can see the formula. Yeah, Kumar, just a minute. Can everybody see the formula here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what is the formula? Delta x is that interval size divided by 2 in the bracket y0 term, yn term, and all other terms multiplied by 2. Okay. So in order to do this, this particular presentation I'll share with you on a classroom. Okay. But in order to do this, now let us go back to the Excel sheet and see what we have done.
Oh, I wasn't able to see the formula.
I will share the formula. So formula says you have to take the delta x divided by 2, multiply with the addition of y0 plus 2y1 plus 2y2 plus 2y3 and so on. Okay. Now here x value is written in column A. I will repeat, but let me complete this part first. Okay. X values are written in column A. I hope this is visible to all.
Sir, one
Yes.
second.
Yes, sir.
Sir, can I see the formula of D6?
Formula of
D6.
D6. Okay.
Yes.
So here I have written, yeah, I'm coming to that. So here in a column A, you have all x values. In column B, you have written f of x, which is nothing but y. Okay. And I am writing here the terms that I want to add. Okay. So in column D, I am writing terms that I want to add. Okay. So the first term is as it is, which is y0. Next term is twice y1. So it is 2 into b6. Okay, b6 is your y1, b7 is y2, b8 is y3, and so on, right? So I'm taking 2b6, 2b7, 2b8, and so on, up to last point 2 into b104, which is yn minus 1, second last point. Okay, not the last point, second last point. Last point again is just yn. So you see the formula is b105. So at D105, you have B105. Is this fine?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
sir.
now, when we do this addition, this is nothing but integral. According to trapezoidal rule, this is going to be integral of x square dx from 0 to 5. Now, you know x square dx is integral. Analytically, when you solve, it is x cubed by 3. Okay, and you have to put the limit. So it is 125 5 cube minus 0 cube. Okay, divided by 3. So 125 divided by 3. If I calculate that, say in another cell equal to 125 divided by 3, I get 41.66667. And here my answer is 41.66875, which means you see there is an error in the third decimal place here. There is an error in the third decimal place from the actual value that I should be getting and the numerical method that we have used over here. Okay, so trapezoidal rule is in a way simple, but not very, very precise. I can take limit from say -2 to +2, Okay, and I will have to, of course, recalculate this. So what is minus 2 to plus 2? You see it is going to be x cube divided by 3 again. Okay, upper limit minus lower limit. So upper limit x cube is 2 raised to 3, which is 8. So 8 divided by 3 minus of minus 8 divided by 3, because it is minus, the lower limit is minus 2. Okay, so basically it is going to be 16 divided by 3. So when I calculate 16 divided by 3, okay, I'm getting 5.33. Okay, and in fact it will go, this is in scientific notation, but it will actually go 5.3333 and so on. Okay, whereas trapezoidal rule is giving me 3 significant digits correctly, but next digits are 4, 4. Okay, so this is also going to be dependent on what is the dx value that I'm choosing. Okay, if I had taken dx smaller, instead of going say 100, if I go to 1000, yes, it is possible. We may be able to do it better. Okay, let us do quick calculations here. So what I'm going to do is, now I'm going to put 1000 points, but I will have to redraw the graph. I will have to redo the calculations. Okay, so let me quickly do that. So I'm writing here, this is fine, but I need to apply this formula to next 1000 cells. So I have to go to A1005. A6 to A1005. I have applied it. So you see that my A1005, okay, you can see over here it is 2. That was the upper limit we decided, and I started with minus 2. Similarly, I will have to write this formula, copy this formula from B5 to B1005. Okay, and I'll paste this formula. So the last value is 4. Now this is, I'm talking simple expressions first. Okay, now in trapezoidal rule, remember the first number y0 is going to be, first term that I want to add is y0. Last term that I'm going to add is going to be at 100 at D00 D1005. Okay, so here it is going to be B1005. So first and last are going to be just same as the function values. All intermediate values that I want to add will be double. So it is going to be 2 into, say here, B6, and I will copy paste this formula in the entire range up to D1004. So my last value is B1005, which is same as yn. The earlier term is going to be twice yn minus 1, twice yn minus 2, and so on. The first value is going to be y0, then twice y1, twice y2, and so on. Okay, so we are going to have all these things. Now let me add all this. So this is going to be delta x. Remember, the integration formula is delta x divided by 2 multiplied by this entire summation. Okay, so sum of this entire thing. Sorry, that final bracket I was not entering. So now see what has happened. Earlier, we know the actual answer should be 8 cubed by 3 minus 8 cubed by 3, which is 16 by 3. So 5.3333 and so on. Okay. Here what is happening? Earlier, remember, the value was 5.3344. Now it is 5.333344. So what is happening is, because I went from dx of 0.04 to 0.004, now the error is coming in the 5th significant digit. Earlier it was in the 3rd significant digit itself. In fact, the error was in the 4th significant digit, 3rd decimal place. Okay, now error is coming in the 5th decimal place. Is this part clear?
Yes, sir, one question. The trapezoidal rule D5, that should be equal to B5.
D5 should be equal to B5. Yes, Y0 and Yn remains as they are. All intermediate values are doubled.
Okay, and the F6. Could you please show the formula once more? Is it the same that is shown above right now?
Yes. See, D6 is 2B6. D7 is 2B7.
Okay,
D8 is
and
2B8.
D 1005 is the same as B 1005.
Yes,
Last value should be
B1005.
same.
Yes, yes.
And
Easy.
the summation formula.
Summation I am taking is like just complete summation. Summation from D5 to D1005. So I am taking the first value, last value I have written here itself correctly. Okay, and I am taking the entire sum.
I'm getting a different answer. I'm getting 3.31. I did the same thing, I guess. Yeah.
So,
Pratik,
Yeah.
it is due to you have copied the formula and it has gone up to last cell. So you have to change the last cell once again. I was getting the same as well.
Okay, so last cell is not included.
Not
last
included.
when I copied this formula, if you remember, I had selected D6 to D1004, not 1005.
Okay. Thank you.
So good observation, Rohit. And this is how practice really helps you, that you start picking up mistakes. See, ultimately in competition, debugging becomes very important thing later, and that surely you can quickly guess using with your practice. Okay, so this is
Sir,
about x square. Yes.
Sir, above in your like function test, like it is A2 divided by 2 into summation of from D5 to D1005. Like I'm not getting that. Summation should be in the numerator. Then why it is in?
It is in the numerator only. You
But,
see, I have multiplied.
But you did not need to keep the brackets or something.
If moment I keep the bracket, it will go in denominator.
No, the brackets in A2 and then after 2.
No, it is
Bracket.
not. It is not, because summation, multiplication and division have same precedence. Okay, multiplication, division have same precedence. What does it mean? Whatever comes first, it will do that. So here, what it is doing is, it is taking A2 value, dividing by 2. It will calculate the answer, multiply that answer with sum. Okay. So multiplication, division has precedence, same precedence. Addition, subtraction has same precedence.
No, I was reading like A2 divided by 2 into summation.
Yeah, but I see that is a very common mistake, especially when you're writing a more complicated formula. So that is where I was talking about that 1 by kt. So when you calculate 1 by kt, naturally you tend to write 1 divided by k into t. It is not 1 divided by k into t. It is 1 divided by k divided by t, because k is also in denominator, t is also in denominator.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's check it for some other functions. Okay. Say for example, I want to do calculation from 0 to say 5, and exponential function, e raised to minus or e raised to plus, e raised to minus.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, e raised to minus 5. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but I have a doubt. How
please.
did you calculate the actual value, like that 5.33?
Analytically, I solved. It was x square function. So integral of x square is x cubed by 3.
Yes, sir.
So you put upper limit and lower limit. 2 cubed by 3 minus 2 cubed by 3.
Okay,
so that was
sir,
8 by 3 minus 8 by
Yes,
3
sir.
or 16 by 3. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now here what I have done is I have taken function e raised to minus x. I'm going from 0 to 5. So what do you get? E raised to minus x, 0 to 5. See, I don't have to rewrite all these things now. This particular column D is written once. Moment I'm making change over here and applying that formula to this entire B column, my answer is ready here. This is 0.993264. This is what I'm getting when I add from 0 to 5. Now, what is integral e raised to minus x dx? So, e raised to minus x dx is e raised to minus x upon minus 1. And you put the evaluation, you put the limits 0 to 5. Because of the minus sign, it will become you can interchange the order. Okay, so it becomes e raised to 0 minus e raised to minus 5. What is e raised to 0? It's 1. Okay, and so let me calculate here. 1 minus exp minus 5. Sorry, exp, yeah, minus 5. And you see it is 0.993. And here also I'm getting the same. Let me just change this format. Instead of putting 2 decimal places, let me put 6 decimal places here. And you see what is happening. Okay, let me not put scientific notation. Let me put a number with 6 decimal place, and you see what am I getting. So you see the error here is changing in is in the 6 decimal place. 99326 remains same. My calculation gives 99624, 99364, sorry, and the analytical way, if you had solved, you would have got 0.993262. So you see, again, these values are quite nicely matching because I was taking nicely behaving functions anyway. But let me take, say, sine function, and I'm going to take now in radians. So let me take maximum value as, say, pi. So how do I write pi? So pi is a function in Excel. You can take the precise value of pi. So, but that function you have to write starting with equal to. So equal to pi and the empty brackets. Okay, that will give you the value of pi. And the x minimum is 0. And let me calculate the value. Let me write the function here, sine a phi, and apply that everywhere. So I'm getting integral of sine x dx from 0 to pi, and you know that area under the curve is 2. Okay, of course here I have not calculated with that. Okay, so area under the curve is 2, you know, because when you do analytically solve this particular problem, it is integral sine x dx is nothing but minus cos x, and you put the limit 0 to pi, so you get cos of pi minus cos of cos of 0 minus cos of pi, okay, with that negative sign included. So it is nothing but 1 minus minus 1, okay, and you get 2. And you see again the error over here is in the 6 decimal place. Okay, so trapezoidal rule gives you the answer nicely. Of course, there are going to be small amount of errors. Okay, is this part clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you can then do numerical integrations of various kinds of functions. See, for example, I may do x e raised to minus x. Okay, and I can take limit from 0 to pi again, say. Okay, and let me write this as a phi into exp minus a phi, and apply it, and you get this number. Okay, now a phi x e raised to minus x, if you do the integration, okay, from 0 to pi, you were supposed to get around 1. Okay, and you are getting this particular value. So you can calculate that depending on what limits you are putting. If I put the limit of 10, I'm taking more area. Okay, let me plot this graph because that will make it clear. Let me plot this graph. How does this look like? Because graphical understanding is another thing. And before I go to the more precise method, let us understand what is happening. You are calculating area under the curve, this curve. Okay, so from 0 to phi, okay, from 0 to phi, you will take this area, but from phi onwards, there is going to be a tail. Now let me put lower limit as phi and upper limit as 10. So you see from 0.035 down to very close to 0, you're going to get this tail. Okay, this area you have neglected, but if you take limit from 0 to infinity, you are supposed to get 1 in this case. So if I put 100, for example, okay, or 100 is a too large a value, even if I put something like 25, okay, almost quite matching 0 here, and you see almost entire area is considered, and you get the total area under the curve close to 1. Okay, there is an error in the 5th significant digit, but otherwise it is quite close to 1. So integral x e raised to minus x from 0 to infinity is 1, but even if you go up to limit of 10, okay, the error will be in the 4th decimal place. It's not going to be very large, which means a very small region of the tail you are missing out. Okay, so numerical method has this advantage that at times you don't know when you are calculating a particular series whether that series will turn into pi or not. Sometimes you guess that it could become a pi. Okay, so what you can do quickly is you can quickly do the evaluation, add the summation of those things. Okay, do the numerical integration and see whether the value is coming closer to pi by increasing number of series, whether you are getting it or not. Okay, these things always can be checked out fast. Okay, and you see, once you have a practice, then writing this column doesn't take much time. Okay, you can quickly do these things. Okay, initially it is always part of developing that skill. Let's
Sir,
move ahead. Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Here we are comparing the area that is obtained from the trapezoidal rule with the analytical one.
Correct.
So we know that we have this value and we should approach this value. In
Correct.
cases when we don't have analytical value or it is
Exactly, that is where you are going to use
analytical value,
yes.
and how we can figure out at how much error is this in the trapezoidal rule, or at up to what extent it is correct. Like how to figure it out without analytical results.
Yeah, so there are formulae which gives you what could be the upper limit on the error, and in one of the sessions we'll discuss that what could be the upper limit on the error by a particular method, but that only gives you an upper limit. That will not tell you a precise thing. Okay, so numerical techniques will always have some amount of error, and one has to always deal with that. See, I mean, for simple functions, doing analytical way is fine, but complicated functions, when it becomes really tedious to do analytical integrations, as I told you, the integrations are difficult because you have to calculate area under the curve. You don't know whether integration will exist as another closed form function. Okay, so in such case, numerical method helps, and if you can take very small interval and you see the values changing. Okay, suppose, see, for example, instead of going from say 100 iterations, I had gone for 2000 iterations, and I observe that value changes in the 3rd decimal place or 4th decimal place. Then you know that error surely is at that point. Okay, there are practical ways of determining. You increase the interval size and you see whether you're where exactly at what decimal place exactly the things are changing. Is it fine? That is one way of practically looking at it.
Okay, so like thinking to that, like if I'm changing a parameter, like here you were changing x max and looking that how much change in the answer was taking place. Like
no, I'm not changing x max.
Approached.
Wait. I'm not changing. I was not changing x max.
Like
in this particular case, I was there are two different things. First case, I said I want keeping x minimum, x maximum same. I want to see by changing dx how much is the improvement. That is what I did earlier. Okay.
Yes.
So that is a way to practically determine where can at what significant digit error may creep in. That is a practical way. In this particular case, I was looking at something different. I was not actually looking at numerical technique method. I was explaining the physical significant part here. I was saying when you consider the indefinite integrals, or when you consider the improper integrals, okay, where one of the limit goes to infinity. Okay, they say for example integral 0 to infinity x e raised to minus x dx. When you solve that integral analytically, you know it is value is 1. So I have taken function x e raised to minus x. I can go to infinity here in this upper limit. So what I'm doing is, if I change the limit, upper limit to 5, 10, 15, 20, am I approaching 1? So yes, I am approaching 1. Okay, so here I was showing a different part. Here I was okay. I mean, sorry, I probably did not made it that clear in the beginning. Changing the interval dx value is to check for whether your method is becoming more precise or not. This special case, going x max to 10 was only to check whether this improper integral I can evaluate nicely. It is improper integral, remember. Improper integral means one of the limits is going to infinity. Okay?
Okay, sir. So in this particular case, like if one of the limit is approaching infinity, we can check like this and
Yes. And that can tell you that how much area under the curve you are neglecting if you are restricting yourself to finite value.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, I have a question.
Yes.
If suppose we have interval of some function, we know,
Okay.
but for x we have been given interval 0 to 5,
Okay.
and we want accurate assumption of our answer, means accurate approximation of our answers. So what we can do, we can select the smallest segment, a partition of that interval. Suppose from 0 to 5 it is given, I can take 0 to 1 and take the smallest dx possible for me to calculate, and then take the answer out of it using that partition 0 to 1, and same to do for 2 to
1 to 2, 2 to 3.
And
yes,
if
you are
somehow-
right. But it is what it means is, instead of doing iteration for 1 to 1000, you are doing it 1 to 1000 5 times. Right?
Yes.
See, from 0 to 5, I was doing 1000 iterations. I was dividing this range into 1000 parts. When you do 0 to 1, then 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and every time you are dividing into 1000 parts, okay, what you are doing basically is 0 to 5 you are dividing in 5000 parts. Is it fine?
Yes, sir.
So that is perfectly fine. And you want to do that, you might as well do that in Excel itself. I may write this formula, copy this formula to A5005. Okay, I may copy this formula to B, instead of 1005, I'll take it to B5005. Okay, you see, sorry, I didn't apply it. And you see, I have gone to 56005, and now I am taking my interval from 0 to 5. Okay, now I have to. My x max is still 5, right? And my okay. Here I have to divide by 5000, not 1000. So when I do that, I'm going to get nicely things. Yeah, so it is possible. So I mean, somebody had asked earlier that what is the maximum number of rows I can calculate. Here I can go up to million. Okay, so in Excel you can go up to million. But suppose you want to go even beyond that, 5 million, 10 million, then yes, what you are saying is correct. You can divide the entire range into smaller parts and independently calculate all those things, and then you add, because anyway it is area under the curve, so an area is going to be additive. So what you are saying is right, perfectly fine. This technique also is going to be useful if somewhere in between the function is going towards say infinity, and then you want to avoid that particular part, but very close to that, and those kind of things you want to do, then also this can become useful. Okay, so yes, that is fine. That is perfectly okay. So this was about trapezoidal rule. Now let us go to the next rule, which is called Simpson's 1/3 rule, and let me share initially the presentation for that. I'll stop Excel and let me present that. So Simpson's 1/3 rule is more interesting rule, and it is more precise, slightly more difficult to do the calculation. What this says is, see, in trapezoidal rule, what you had done, you had connected the two adjacent points, made it a straight line, so that entire column was becoming trapezoid. In Simpson's 1/3 rule, what you are doing is, instead of connecting adjacent 2 points, you take 3 consecutive points and you join them to make a parabola. Okay, now we are not doing all these things in our situation. I'm just giving you a theory behind the Simpson's 1/3 rule. So you take 3 adjacent points, join them to make a parabola. So that parabola curvature will take into account any area that you had missed or calculated extra. Okay, and then what you are doing is, for that, because you want to take 3 points and then next 3 points and so on, your entire interval should be divided in 2 endpoints. To give an example, if suppose my interval is divided into say 100 points, 2n is 100 points. 100 can be taken as 2n. Okay, n is 50 then. Now my interval is going to be, see, x0, x1, x2, x3, x4 up to x100. But I'm going to only consider 50 intervals. What are the 50 intervals? X0, x1, x2 becomes one interval. X2, x3, x4 becomes second interval. X4, x5, x6 becomes third interval, and so on. Easy to remember. X0 to x2 becomes one interval. X2 to x4 becomes another interval. X4 to x6 becomes another interval, and so on. Now here within this x0 to x2, remember there are 3 points, x0, x1 and x2. Correspondingly, there will be 3 function points, y0, y1, y2. Those 3 points I am joining to make a parabola. Now, you know from geometry, if you have 2 points, a unique line will pass through them. In the same way, if you have got 3 points, a unique quadratic curve, a parabola is a quadratic curve, okay, will pass through that. So taking these 50 intervals consisting of x0, x1, x2, x2, x3, x4, x4, x5, x6, these kind of adjacent points, you will make the parabola, make the entire curve consisting of these parabolic columns, and you will join them and find out area under such parabola and add all these areas. In simplified version, for one interval, the area becomes this: x0 to x2 y dx is delta x by 3 a summation of y0 plus 4y1 plus y2. Okay. Sorry. This becomes the summation. How you get this summation? There is a theory for that. We are not right now discussing that. Okay, we can give you a reference. There are many references. One of the best reference I have always found is Introductory Methods of Numerical Analysis by Shastri. Okay, I will send you the name also. Point is, when I do this calculation, I get this kind of formula. When I calculate similarly the last interval x2n minus 2 to x2n, I'm going to get delta x divided by 3 y2n minus 2 plus 4 times y2n minus 1 plus y2n. Now when you add all these things, see what is going to happen. First y0 remains as it is, last y2n remains as it is. all these odd numbered values, here in this first summation, it is going to be 4y1. In the second interval, it will be y2 plus 4y3 plus y4. Then there will be y4 plus 4y5 plus y6 and so on. So all these odd terms are going to be multiplied by 4 times. And the even terms, you see here y2 comes, and in the next interval again y2 is going to come, y2 plus 4, y3 plus y4. So all intermediate even terms will be multiplied by twice. And when you do all this, what you get is this. Total integral is delta x divided by 3 y0 plus 4 times all odd terms plus twice all even terms and the last term. Is this fine? How you got this formula is not right now we are bothered about. Okay, how you got this formula, one can refer, but this is fine. I mean, if you do this summation, this is what you are getting. Any question in that?
Sir, so we are taking points like x0, x1, x2, parabola of that, and then
Correct.
x2, x3, x4.
Yes,
So that's
yes.
why we're getting 4 times y1.
Correct.
Okay, I got confused in that.
So you are taking parabola of x0, x1, x2. I mean, not x0, x1, x2. Actually, it is y1, y0, y1, y2. Then you are taking parabola of y2, y3, y4, parabola of y4, y5, y6, and so on. Okay.
Sir, but isn't parabolic area less accurate than the rectangular stripes we had before?
Let's see. Parabola is going to take into account. Parabola is going to take into account the areas that you have missed, the gaps between the curve and the straight lines that you are joining. Okay, so yes, it is going to have some amount of error, but this is going to surely give you relatively less error as compared to trapezoidal rule. Okay, so let us do this calculation. Let us do this calculation and see how we get. Okay, so I stop this presentation and come back to the Excel. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. So now what I want to do is, okay, let me go back to that 1000 only, not 5000. I'm cancelling everything here. I have put the upper limit, lower limit. Let me keep it 1000. In fact, I started with 100. Let me take 100 only first. And I have to write some interval. So I'm taking minimum here equal to A5 plus, A5 plus $A, $2. And then I'm going to apply this to A100 up to A105. And I applied that. So, and I for a quick verification, I press Control down arrow to go to the last cell and see, yes, upper limit, I have got it correctly. It is always a useful practice that whenever you are doing calculation, quickly check whatever you expect, at least that is happening. The final answer, that could be a different case, but here at least you know that I want from 0 to 5. Okay, so that is happening. Now I want to take some function. Okay, so let me start with simple kind of functions again. Say x square. Sorry, I can't write x square like this. I have to write equal to A5 square. And I will apply this from B5 to B105. And applied it. And yes, I got 5 square as 25. Fine. Now I want to terms for Simpson's method or Simpson's rule. Okay, my first term is going to be as it is. You see, y0 and yn remain as they are. my last term D105, sorry, D105 also will be as it is. I'm going to just write that term as it is. Now I need to bother about which is odd term and which is even term. Now that's going to be a tedious job. So what I'm going to do is I had to put one extra column here. So I will start with 0, 1, 2, and so on. Okay. So I may just add 1 into this. So C5 plus 1 and sorry, C105. What I've done is I'm just writing the term number. Let me write term number so it becomes clear for people who are looking at it. What is it doing here? Okay, so I'm writing term number, so it becomes term 0 to term 100. Now I want to know, see, if it is odd term, I want to do something. If it is even term, I want to do something. So what I will do is I'll use one of the functions called, okay, if even. If is even in the function which checks whether the given number is even or odd. So it is going to check if, see, I'm writing if is even C6. Now this is, if it is true, then I want 4 times, sorry, even number. So then I want 2 times this particular term. And if it is odd, I want 4 times this particular number. Look at the conditions clearly. Look at this expression over here. I'm putting a condition if function, if condition. So if condition, the syntax is after if I put a bracket, the first thing that I put is condition. If this condition is true, then I write if condition is true, what I should do. What should be the value. If condition is false, then what should be the value. That comes after second comma. Okay. So first comes condition, comma. If condition is true, what should I write? What should be the value? Comma. If condition is false, what should be the value? Which condition I'm taking? Is even function I'm using. Is even function gives me a true value if that C6 is even. If it will give me false value if C6 is odd. Okay. So I'm using this. So this will guarantee that whichever odd terms are there, they will be multiplied by 4 and they will be put here. Whichever are even terms, they will be multiplied by 2 and they will be put here. Okay. So see, for example, this first term is an odd term and the value 0.025 is multiplied by 4 and it is put over here. Okay. Now I'm going to copy this formula up to 1 minus last cell. Remember, last cell I have already put the value. Okay, so D104 and I paste it. Now see here what is happening. The first term 0.0025 multiplied with 4. Second term even number multiplied with 2. Third term odd number multiply with 4. So 0.0225 multiplied with 4, 0.09. Fourth term even number multiply with 2. Is this part clear? What is happening?
Yes.
Sir, can you please show the rule once, like the formula?
Okay, the formula is whenever you want to check any formula, you press equal to if, and then it will tell you the condition here. So the condition is if, after if you first put logical test, then you put comma, then you put value, if the condition is true, what value you want there in that cell, comma. If the logical test condition is false, what value you want there. Okay, so that is the syntax for if function. Now you can see here, if logical test is some function. Okay, I'll discuss about that bit later. Logical test, if it is true, then twice into B8 I want. in this cell. In D8, I want twice into B8. Okay, 2 times Y. If this condition is false, 4 times B8 I want. Okay. Now, which condition I am checking whether number is even, the term is even or odd. If it is even term, the is even function gives you true or false value. Let me write here, okay, separately. Suppose I am taking 1, 2, and 3 and 4, okay, and I am writing is even this number. So you see, it is giving me output false. This is giving me output true. This is giving me output false, because is even 3, no, it is false. Is 4 even? Is even, and then I am putting H10, which means 4, so it is true. Okay, so output of is even function is true or false, and I'm using that here to check whether the term is odd or even. If it is even, I want to multiply with 2. If it is odd, I want to multiply with 4. Fine. Now my final expression is going to be equal to, remember, delta x divided by 3. So it is this A2 divided by 3 multiplied by this entire sum. This point to this point. Complete the bracket. And this is what I get, 41.666666. And you know it is, the function was x square. So 125 divided by 3 output is. And you get this. You see it is coming precisely to all decimal places that you observe over here. Okay, this is the analytical expression. This is what you got from our calculation. Is it fine? We'll calculate other functions also.
Sir, can you please show the Simpson's rule again?
Yeah, the Simpson's rule is, let me share the, I will have to stop this and let me share the, yes.
Yes, sir, got it.
Yeah, so it is first term, last term as they are, then all odd terms multiplied by 4, all even terms multiplied by 2.
Yes, sir,
Now,
thank you.
if you are curious, you may also check in the, let me stop this and come back to Excel. If you're curious, you may also, you might have asked yourself question, some of you might have tested that like is even, there is also is odd function. Okay, so if I use that is odd function, then if condition is true, I will have to multiply by 4, so that 4bx will come first and 2b6 will come later. Okay, because if the number is odd, then I have to multiply with 4. So when the condition is true, multiply with 4. Condition is false, multiply with 2. Okay, let us quickly check for other functions. Okay, this was for x square. Let me go for x cube. Let me take some easy interval that you can quickly calculate, say -3 to +3. What do you expect, -3 to +3? X cube function, area under the curve. I have not yet put the function, I have not copied the function everywhere. But guess, what should be the answer? -3 to +3, integration of x cube. Anybody quick?
0.
Has to be 0. It's odd function and the symmetric intervals. Very good. So let's see. And you get 0 in the format of Excel 1.24 10 to the -13, which is as good as 0. Okay. Take 0 to 3 and you get 20.25, because that is what? X cube function. So 3 raised to 4 divided by 4. So it is 81 divided by 4. And you know 81 divided by 4 will be this. You can check that, equal to 81 divided by 4. So 20.25, yes. You get this precise. Okay. You can try with other kind of functions. Say, for example, I consider again that a5 into ext minus a5. That is x e raised to minus x function. Okay. And I wanted to go up to say 10. Okay. So x e raised to minus x, 0 to 10, and this is the answer. Did I? Yeah. Sorry. A raised to minus a5 it is. Okay. The answer was supposed to be 1, right? You see here the answer in this case 0.9994989. Okay. Now most probably this answer is because you are restricted to 10. Suppose I go to 25. Okay, you go fourth decimal place 9. You go 30. Okay, 30 actually it has reduced the error. Okay, so it has reduced that number. So you go to 40. Okay, and you observe this. So this is what, and then you can go more precise by minimizing this that dx term. Okay, instead of 100, you may think of 1000 iterations, and accordingly you can work with that. Okay, so this is Simpson's rules, and you can calculate side by side with Simpson's rule what happens with the trapezoidal rule, what happens, and you will see that Simpson's rules give you a more precise answer than trapezoidal rule. But trapezoidal rule has some kind of simplicity. Let me show you graphically certain interesting thing, because that is going to be also useful when we will talk about solving differential equation. So let me start in a new sheet, quickly redo things. Okay, suppose I take okay, say 5, 0 to 5, and this is equal to this minus this divided by say 500. I want to take interval. Okay, and I'm starting with lower limit equal to a5 plus $a$2, and copy this and paste it in next 500 cells. A505, paste it, and you can see that last number is 5, so that is correct, of x. And let's suppose I want to calculate this as x raised to x square function in the beginning. Okay, so I take a5 square and e505, paste. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this, plot this first for graphical understanding part, and you know it is a parabola, and let me take say -5 to +5. So you know it is a parabola, it looks nice parabola. Suppose I go on adding, what is integration? Integration is nothing but area under the curve. So if I go on adding, okay, continuous summation, I take the very first interval, the sum is not there, so 0. And then I'm going to add the average of these two, this plus this divided by 2 multiplied by the interval. Okay, see what I'm doing is I am in the next cell I'm doing a continuous sum. So this value y1 plus y0 divided by 2 multiplied by $a$2 delta x, and I go on adding this, apply this to the last cell. So what I'm doing effectively is P1050. What I've done in this case is I have plotted a function, And then at every interval, I'm calculating from left hand side to right hand side. If I go on adding, what do I get? So you see this third thing, which is a continuous summation up to every next interval, okay, is going to give me the actual functional nature of my integration. If I plot additionally one more thing, one more chart, I go to select data, add one more series and continuous sum I see, and X series I take scene, and Y series I take this continuous sum. See what I have got. I got almost a straight line here. Okay, I have got almost a straight line. Now that is not very clearly visible because the scale is different. So what I can do is select and I use it on secondary axis, but then it shows me a parabola. Why? Let me just quickly check what has happened. Did I write it correctly? I made a mistake here. What I'm doing is I'm only I have to add the earlier cell continuous summation plus I have to take average of this plus this divided by 2 multiplied by $E $. I had made a mistake, so let me write the formula here. I'm taking the earlier cell plus this y1 plus y0 divided by 2, okay, multiplied with dx, okay, and I go on doing this. So I'm continuously adding the earlier cell value plus immediately the next immediate values of this y addition. When I do this, when I add this, see what I get. So let me add the series. So you see what is happening. Here I'm getting a parabola, and on top of that, this continuous sum is nothing but x cube kind of sum. The constant of integration has changed because I started with sum as 0. So that constant of integration is going to decide, but the functional nature I can always get from this. Now, in place of this, if I put, instead of say x square, I put sine value, okay, sine of a phi. So I'm going to get a sinusoidal curve, and you see what happens. Look at this red curve, which is nothing but continuous summation, and the first term I am calculating as a sine function, okay, and you see here it is integration of sine is minus cosine, so it is going from minus this point. I can start my minimum value to 0, and I can take this as 2 into 2 pi, and you can clearly see what is happening. Okay, so this is sinusoidal function, the blue one is, and the continuous summation with a shift of origin, it is minus cosine function. Okay, it is minus cosine function. There is shift of origin, and that shift of origin is nothing but the constant of integration, because that you don't know the upper limit and lower limit are going to decide that. Okay, so you can also use this method to see the functional nature of the whatever function you are taking. The integration functional nature for sine you can clearly see as a cosine, or I may take cosine and you will see integration of cos is sine. So the cos here, and you see it is now the first function is cosine function and integration of that is sine function, and you can clearly see that. Okay, so you can take even x function. Suppose I take function as x, which is, I just write E5. And you know the area under the curve is going to be a parabola. You see this continuous summation, the red curve is a parabolic curve. I may take limit as say minus phi to plus phi, and you can clearly see that my original function is the blue one, which is straight line. Area under the curve is a parabolic function. There is a shift of origin, and that shift of origin is happening mainly because it indicates that constant of integration. So we'll continue tomorrow with numerical differentiation techniques, and you can look for the more assignment based on these things. But I hope these basic ideas are clear. What you are doing is in integration, you are doing the summation part.
So can you please explain the shift of origin and the constant term, please?
See, this particular exercise is not an exercise of numerical integration. It was just an additional thing that I'm showing here. What I'm showing here is this. I have plotted f of x, and I want to see how the integration function looks like. I'm interested in how graphically it looks like. So I can use the same logic, that earlier term, that C phi is the earlier term, plus the present y value minus an earlier y value average multiplied by delta x. See, this is what we have taken for calculating integration in trapezoidal rule. Okay, so that I just go on adding that. When I go on adding that, depending on what earlier value I had kept, okay, what was my initial value I have kept, that will decide the shift of origin. But functional nature is very important. If I take a straight line x, the functional nature is x square. If I had taken this as minus a phi, remember, minus x value, the functional nature would have been, what is the integral of minus x? Minus x square it will be. And you see the parabolic shape changes, it is minus x square, okay, with a shift of origin. Fine. And so my original function is now minus x, and the integration is minus x square, which is inverted parabola. Okay. If I take e raised to x, that is something very interesting, because you know e raised to minus x. Okay, it is minus e raised to minus x when I take integration. So e raised to minus a phi, if I take, and let me go to 0 to 5. So you see what is happening. The blue curve is e raised to minus x, and the red curve is minus of e raised to minus x. Of course, there is a shift of origin with this one. Okay, but this is exactly mirror image. So okay, with the shift of origin.
Mahesh.
Yes.
Mahesh.
Yes.
Yeah. If you do e raised to minus x from 0 to 5,
yeah,
you'll get 1 minus e raised to minus x. So basically, that one shift is because of that.
Because you are putting that limit from 0 to 5. I'm not saying.
Correct.
It is wrong. I'm only saying that.
I'm just pointing out for everybody.
Correct.
That it's coming because of that limits of integration.
Yes. And remember, when you are doing integration without limits, whatever constant of integration you are putting, the constant of integration basically absorbs these. It depends on the limits of integration. Okay, so when you are doing definite integral, the limits of integration decide what is going to be that constant. So in numerical integration, we are always doing definite integrals. We are because we are putting numbers, so we know what is lower limit, what is upper limit, and therefore we are getting this. So yes, thank you, sir. And we can then, of course, you can play with multiple kinds of functions. Okay, say, let me just quickly take one function, though we have overshooted our time. Okay, e raised to minus x square. Okay, so you know e raised to minus x square function, and let me take symmetric intervals minus pi to plus pi. Okay, e raised to minus of x square function. Why is it giving me? Okay, sorry. and apply. And what you get here, so you see this blue curve is the Gaussian curve, e raised to minus x square. And when you go on adding, what is happening? I mean, this is something very important also when you're going to deal later with error or Gaussian distribution of errors. You are calculating area under the curve from left hand side to the right hand side. Okay, so basically what you are doing is you go on adding the area under the curve in the blue, and as you go on adding the area, okay, this addition is nothing but this red curve, and the red curve goes on increasing. Okay, and after top, again you are further adding it, and therefore it goes on increasing further. But now here beyond 2, you see the contribution is not changing much from the original curve. Area is becoming very, very small, and therefore the addition in the area is not increasing much. Okay, so it is effectively becoming flat. So total area under this curve, you can then calculate, will be somewhere around 1.8 or so. Okay, and when you divide this Gaussian function with certain factors like root of 2 pi and so on, okay, basically what you are doing is you are trying to make area under the curve as 1. That is what we call normalized function. Okay, so the idea of normalized function, that with what number should I divide the function so that I get area under the curve as 1. Okay, that part also you can understand when you do these things. Okay, so when you know that the final value, final summation value here, okay, is going to be say 1.772454, and you see it is remaining almost that. Okay, what I can do is I can divide the entire function by that value. Okay, so I say divide by 1 point. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you please? The increase in the continuous sum is quite non-intuitive in the case of this Gaussian. Can you please elaborate?
Yeah.
Like
so,
it is how like value is decreasing, the sum should also decrease. Like
no, you are, even though the value is decreasing, the area is still you are adding as you go from left to right. Entire curve is above 0. So even though when this blue curve value is decreasing, see what is happening. That I'm still adding extra term here. I'm still adding extra term. It's just that I'm adding smaller and smaller terms, but all these terms are still positive. So I'm adding, yeah.
So the in the formula of the
so what is
continuous
happening
sum,
is this red curve is approaching a saturation because I am adding smaller and smaller and smaller terms. Yes.
So
is it fine?
in the continuous sum formula, the like C5 term, the very first.
Yes, C5 term I started with 0.
So it will be like preceding all terms would be added like C5 plus C6.
Correct,
plus
correct,
B6
correct.
plus
So
B5.
in C6 I am writing C5 plus this.
Both terms would be added, and then
correct.
it will proceed like that. Okay.
Yes, yes.
I thought only the one before term is added, and then the.
No, it is a continuous sum. So earlier sum plus extra terms.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a continuous. So 772454. Suppose I divide this. Okay, divide this by 1. What was that? 1 point or 2 point? 1 point. Yeah. So divide by 1.7724. Okay, when I do this, I'm effectively trying to normalize the function. So you see now my function is normalized, and ultimately area under the curve is 1. It is reaching 1. Okay, so normalization of function also numerically you can do this way, that you find out the continuous summation, find out what is going to be the maximum value area under the curve. That term you will use. So analytically I may have to bother about doing that integration analytically and finding out whether root pi comes or such kind of things, the terms come. Here I don't have to really bother about that. I have to understand the physical interpretation. I have to understand the interpretation of that, but I don't have to bother about what kind of term will come. Okay, so that is one important thing that we can also keep in mind, because many of these things are going to be useful as small tools when you are solving a larger problem. So I think we can then any question?
Sir, hello.
Yes.
So I have a doubt. In Simpson's one-third rule, you told that we construct a parabola, but I'm still not able to visualize how would we construct a parabola between three consecutive points, as if the three consecutive points are continuously increasing. So we can't construct a parabola with.
You can construct a parabola. What is it will not be your symmetric parabola. It will not be your standard parabola.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So you take any quadratic equation, it is going to give you parabola. Okay, it is not going to be standard parabola. That's it. It will be parabola with a shift of origin.
Sir, on a
It will be
quick
patch
note,
of a parabola. Yeah.
can you please explain, like, in the continuous sum formula, the dx term that you are multiplying? Like, I'm not getting the formula after division, like after average.
You are talking about this formula
Yes,
that I have written
yes,
here.
yes, formula.
Okay. See, what I have done is whatever sum I have calculated up to earlier point, in that sum I have to add what is the next contribution. So what I have to do is I have to add the next column. And what is that next column that I'm going to add? It is area of that trapezoid. What is area of trapezoid? The value of the function plus value of the function okay, to adjacent point. So that is b8 plus b7 divided by 2 multiplied by delta x.
Achha. Okay.
That is, so this is just addition of next
Trapezoidal column,
that
like
that I'm adding. Yeah.
Okay.
So we can end for here. We can end this session here.
So will the recordings be provided of this lecture?
Whenever it is done, it will be provided, of course. So today, hopefully, it is successful, so it will be provided.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Also, sir, some resources for Simpson's school.
Okay, I will send you the name of the book as well as because right now it may not be easy for all of you. If some particular section of that, say in PDF form or that I can provide.
Yes.
Yeah, so that can be done.